Snow fell quietly that night, blanketing the forgotten edges of the city in silence, until the scream shattered it. Michael Reed's boots crunched over the ice as his daughter's mitten tugged at his hand. "Daddy," little Lily whispered, her voice small against the darkness. "Can we help her?" What happened next would not only save a woman's life, it would drag Michael back into a world of violence, loyalty, and power he thought he had left behind. And by the time the sun rose, 3 black Rolls-Royces would be parked outside his rusting trailer, their engines humming like an omen of everything about to change. Michael Reed was a man built on discipline, yet hollowed by loss. The Army Ranger years had left their scars, seen and unseen, but his life now revolved around the little girl holding his hand. Lily was 8 years old, curious-eyed, and the only anchor keeping him steady since her mother's passing. Their world was simple: a rundown trailer, second-hand coats, and the unshakable bond between father and daughter. On that frozen night, he wasn't looking for trouble. He was just walking Lily home from a late grocery run, clutching a brown paper bag filled with canned soup and day-old bread. The alleys in this part of town were shortcuts most avoided, but Michael knew every corner, every shadow. Then came the muffled cries. He slowed, listening, instincts awakening like an old wound reopening. 3 men were circling someone in the alley, their figures sharp against the falling snow. A woman, tall, elegant even in her torn coat, was shoved against the brick wall, terror etched across her face. Lily tugged at his hand, her eyes wide. "Daddy, can we help her?" That was all it took. Michael set the grocery bag down in the snow, cracked his knuckles, and stepped forward. The Ranger inside him, the man he thought was gone, was suddenly alive again. The fight was quick, brutal, and silent. Michael didn't waste words. A fist to the first man's jaw sent teeth scattering like ice chips. A swift kick crushed the second's knee, leaving him howling on the ground. The third swung a knife, but Michael twisted his wrist until the blade clattered harmlessly away, then dropped him face first into the snow. The woman gasped, clutching her coat. Her eyes, piercing green, framed by streaks of golden hair, met Michael's, full of gratitude and disbelief. He offered no comfort, only a nod before turning back to his daughter. "Come on, Lily. Let's go home." But Lily wasn't ready to leave. She walked to the woman, offering her tiny, mittened hand. "You're safe now," she whispered. The woman's lips trembled, and tears froze at the corners of her lashes as she took Lily's hand gently. Michael led them both out of the alley. By the time they reached the main road, the woman had vanished into the night, leaving only questions behind. To Michael, it was over. Just another fight he hadn't wanted but couldn't walk away from. What he did not know was that this single act would ripple into his life like a storm breaking over still water. The next morning dawned bitterly cold. Michael was pouring black coffee into a chipped mug when he heard it, the low, polished hum of engines pulling up outside. He stepped onto his porch, squinting at the sight. 3 black Rolls-Royces lined up like soldiers on parade, their chrome gleaming against the slush. Men in tailored coats stepped out first, scanning the area with sharp, practiced eyes. Then the rear door of the lead car opened, and the woman from last night emerged. She looked transformed, no longer the vulnerable figure from the alley, but a woman of power and stature, her fur-lined coat brushing the ground as she walked. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice smooth yet weighted with formality, "we need to talk." Michael bristled. He hated when strangers used his name like they knew him. He pulled his daughter behind him protectively. "Lady, whoever you are, last night was just a fight I didn't start, that's all." But Katherine Shaw smiled faintly, as though she knew secrets even he didn't. "It was more than that. You saved me, and you've saved far more than you realize." Katherine insisted he come with her. Against his better judgment, Michael agreed. mostly because Lily's wide-eyed curiosity wouldn't let her father refuse. "Daddy, look at the cars," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. Inside the mansion they arrived at, wealth smothered everything. Marble floors stretched endlessly, chandeliers glittered like captured stars, and servants moved silently, as if part of the furniture. Michael felt out of place instantly. His boots squeaked on the polished floor, his worn jacket drawing every stare. Katherine guided them to a private study, closing the heavy oak doors behind them. She poured 2 glasses of whiskey, but set only one in front of him. "My grandfather will want to meet you," she said. "But before that, you should understand what you've stepped into." Michael leaned back, crossing his arms. "I don't want your money. I don't want your thanks. I just want my daughter safe." Katherine's eyes softened at the mention of Lily. "Then you should know. My family doesn't let debts go unpaid. And last night created a debt none of us can ignore." The grandfather was introduced later that evening. Harold Shaw was a towering presence, not because of his age, but his aura, ex-military, decorated, and now one of the wealthiest men in Europe. His handshake was crushing, his gaze sharp enough to slice through lies. "So," Harold said, studying Michael as though he were a recruit, "you're the man who stopped 3 cowards with his bare hands. Army Ranger, I presume?" Michael stiffened. He hadn't spoken of his past in years. "That was another life," Harold chuckled, pouring himself brandy. "No, son, that's not another life. That's who you are. And I'll tell you something. This family could use a man like you." Michael didn't like the way the old man's words dripped with both admiration and control. He had fought for his country, not for billionaires who threw money around like weapons. Still, something in Harold's gaze warned him this wasn't just an offer, it was the start of a test. That night, Michael tried to refuse everything. He told Katherine he wanted no part in their politics, their wealth, their games. He wanted to go home with his daughter and forget the Rolls-Royces ever came. But Lily's innocence pierced through his resolve. "Daddy," she said softly as she looked up at the mansion's grand staircase, "maybe helping her means we help more people too." Michael crouched to her level, brushing her hair back. "Baby, the world they live in isn't like ours. It's cold. It's cruel. We don't belong here." Katherine, listening from the doorway, whispered, "Maybe you belong more than anyone, because you still know what honor looks like." Michael's chest tightened. He didn't trust Katherine, didn't trust her grandfather, but he couldn't ignore the way his daughter saw the world, as something worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The following day, Michael was introduced to Harold's inner circle, men in suits, each with more arrogance than the last. They looked him over like a tool being evaluated, making no effort to hide their disdain for his worn boots and calloused hands. "You saved Katherine," one of them sneered. "That makes you useful. But let's not mistake usefulness for worth." Michael's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. He wasn't there to prove himself to men who thought money equaled honor. Lily sat quietly beside him, her legs swinging from the oversized chair. When the men's voices grew louder, she stood suddenly and said, "My daddy doesn't need your money. He already saved the most important thing. You." Her words silenced the room. Even Harold looked impressed. Michael squeezed her hand under the table, pride swelling in his chest. He hadn't realized until that moment that his daughter's courage outshone his own. Michael soon learned that Katherine's attackers hadn't been random thugs. They were hired, part of a deeper plot tied to Harold's empire. Someone wanted Katherine silenced, and they had been willing to kill her for it. Harold explained it bluntly. "This family is at war, Reed. Not with guns in trenches, but with power and influence. And now you're in it, whether you like it or not." Michael wanted to walk away, to take Lily and disappear. But Katherine's haunted eyes stayed with him. He could see it, the weight of secrets she couldn't speak. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed in the guest wing, she whispered, "Daddy, sometimes helping someone means staying, even when it's scary." Michael kissed her forehead, torn between the urge to protect her and the truth of her words. He had spent years running from the battlefield, but maybe this was one he was meant to fight. Days passed, and Michael found himself caught in the strange rhythm of the Shaw estate. Harold tested him constantly. Questions about tactics, simulated threats, subtle manipulations meant to measure loyalty. Katherine, on the other hand, was different. She sought Michael's presence in quiet moments, walking the gardens, sharing coffee in the early mornings. Slowly, she revealed glimpses of her past. A childhood spent under Harold's rigid expectations, a life built on appearances instead of choices. Michael found himself drawn to her honesty, even when it was cloaked in guarded words. Yet he kept his distance. He was a widower raising a daughter. Katherine was an heiress caught in a storm of power. Their worlds weren't meant to touch. But Lily, ever perceptive, asked one evening, "Daddy, do you like her?" Michael chuckled, ruffling her hair. "That doesn't matter, baby." Yet deep down it did, more than he wanted to admit. The first true test came without warning. One evening, alarms blared across the estate. Security scrambled as masked intruders breached the outer walls. Harold's men panicked, unprepared for real combat. Michael didn't hesitate. He moved like the soldier he once was, securing the halls, positioning guards, and keeping Katherine and Lily behind him. His calm command cut through the chaos, and even Harold's hardened staff obeyed without question. When the dust settled, 2 intruders were caught while the rest fled. Katherine clung to Michael, her voice trembling as she whispered, "If you hadn't been here..." Harold's eyes glimmered with something between pride and calculation. "You see, Reed, the battlefield never leaves us, and you belong in the fight." Michael carried Lily back to her room afterward, her head resting on his shoulder. He realized the truth he couldn't escape. The war had already found him. After the attack, Michael demanded answers. Who were the intruders? Why was Katherine targeted again? Harold revealed only part of the truth, that his business empire had enemies willing to destroy the Shaw family to gain control. But Michael sensed there was more. Katherine's silence spoke louder than her words. She was hiding something tied not just to Harold's empire, but to her own choices. Lily noticed it too. One evening, she told Katherine quietly, "It's okay to be scared. My daddy says even soldiers get scared." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, and she hugged Lily tightly. That small moment broke something open. Katherine began confiding in Michael in whispers about hidden accounts, secret deals, and the suffocating weight of being Harold's granddaughter. For the first time, Michael realized Katherine wasn't just a victim of her enemies. She was a prisoner of her own family. Tension grew inside the mansion. Harold pressured Michael to stay permanently, offering wealth and security for Lily in exchange for loyalty. Michael refused each time. "You think honor puts food on the table?" Harold barked one night. "You think loyalty keeps a child warm? Money does, influence does, and you're a fool to think otherwise." Michael stood his ground. "I've lived without both. My daughter has too. And she's still richer than half the people in this house because she knows love." Katherine, listening nearby, smiled faintly. For the first time in years, she felt someone had challenged her grandfather not with power, but with truth. But Harold was not a man who accepted defiance lightly. His gaze turned cold. "Careful, Reed. In this world, principles get men killed." Michael A.'s days became a balancing act, protecting Katherine from outside threats while protecting Lily from the toxicity of Harold S. world. He kept her close, shielding her from the whispers of servants and the calculating eyes of Harold's allies. But Lily was stronger than he realized. She found joy even in the mansion's shadows, teaching servants, children to play hopscotch in the marble halls, coaxing laughter from guards who rarely smiled. Her innocence disarmed everyone. Katherine often joined her, sitting cross-legged on the floor in her expensive dresses, laughing like she hadn't in years. Watching them together, Michael's heart ached. They looked like a family he feared could never truly be his. Still, Lily's happiness mattered most. If this dangerous world threatened that, he would walk away in a heartbeat. But for now, they were safe, or so he thought. The second attack came weeks later, deadlier and more precise. A car bomb detonated just as Katherine was leaving the estate. Michael had been seconds away from stepping into the vehicle with her, but his instincts made him pause. That hesitation saved both their lives. Shaken but alive, Katherine collapsed into his arms afterward. "Why won't they stop?" she cried. Michael held her, stroking her hair as Lily clung to his leg. He knew the answer, but didn't speak it aloud, because Harold's enemies would never stop until the Shaws were destroyed, or until Harold gave them what they wanted. That night, as Katherine sat silently by the fire, Michael made a vow to himself. He would uncover the truth behind these attacks, and when he did, he would end it, no matter the cost. Michael began digging quietly, using old ranger contacts across the UK and Europe. What he found chilled him. The attackers weren't just enemies of Harold's empire. They were linked to military contracts, black markets, and scandals buried beneath years of secrecy. And at the center of it all was a name: Harold Shaw. The old man hadn't been honest. The enemies weren't just after wealth. They were after revenge for betrayals Harold had orchestrated decades earlier. Katherine wasn't guilty, but she was the easiest target. Michael confronted Harold with the evidence, slamming files onto his desk. "This isn't just business. It's blood, and it's on your hands." Harold's eyes darkened. "Careful, Reed. You're forgetting your place." But Michael had no intention of staying in any place Harold assigned him. Katherine learned the truth soon after. The betrayal cut deep, shaking the foundations of everything she thought she knew about her grandfather. "You built all of this on lies," she whispered, her voice trembling. "People are dead because of you." Harold didn't deny it. He simply leaned back, cold and unrepentant. "Power requires sacrifice. You'll understand when you're older." Michael stepped between them, fury in his eyes. "She understands enough. She doesn't need to become you." For the first time, Katherine saw Harold not as her protector, but as her captor. And in Michael's defiance, she saw something she had never experienced before: freedom. Plans were made in secret. Katherine, Michael, and Lily began preparing to leave the estate. It was dangerous, but staying meant being pawns in Harold's war. Lily packed her small backpack with crayons and a stuffed rabbit, whispering, "It'll be an adventure, Daddy." Michael kissed her forehead, praying it wouldn't become a nightmare. Katherine hesitated only once, standing in her gilded bedroom, looking at the life she was about to abandon. "Do you think we can really outrun him?" she asked softly. Michael took her hand. "We don't run. We survive. And we fight when we have to." Her eyes met his, steady and trusting. For the first time, she believed it.
The escape wasn't clean. Harold's men discovered their plan halfway through. What followed was chaos: screaming tires on icy roads, headlights slicing through the dark, bullets shattering glass. Michael drove with the precision of a soldier, weaving through back roads, protecting Katherine and Lily with every calculated turn. Katherine clutched Lily in the back seat, whispering prayers through her tears. Finally, they reached an old ranger safehouse Michael hadn't visited in years. It was hidden deep in the Scottish Highlands, rugged and remote. Safe for now, but Michael knew Harold wouldn't stop. The war had truly begun. Days in the safehouse brought an odd peace. Michael taught Lily how to build fires, Katherine how to cook simple meals on an iron stove. For a brief moment, they lived like a family, untouched by wealth, power, or fear. One evening, As snow fell softly outside, Katherine whispered, "I've never felt more free." "And it's because of you," Michael wanted to answer, but words failed him. Instead, he pulled her close, and for the first time since his wife's passing, he allowed himself to feel something new hope. Lily, curled up by the fire, smiled in her sleep for her. This was already home. The peace shattered when Harold himself arrived. He didn't come with soldiers or threats, just a single car and his towering presence. "You think you can run from me?" he growled at Michael. "You think you can steal my granddaughter, my legacy?" Michael stood tall. "She's not your legacy. She's her own person, and you've done nothing but chain her to your sins." Harold's gaze shifted to Katherine. "Choose, child, him, or the family that built you." Katherine's heart pounded. For the first time, she didn't tremble under his gaze. "I already chose," she whispered, stepping closer to Michael. Fury lit Harold's eyes, but before he could act, his own men arrived, men who had grown tired of his tyranny. They revealed the truth. His empire was collapsing, his enemies closing in. The Shaw dynasty was crumbling. Michael didn't rejoice. He simply took Katherine's hand and guided her away. Some battles weren't worth fighting. This one was already lost for Harold. As they walked back toward the safe house, Lily squeezed Michael's hand. "Daddy, we helped her, didn't we?" Michael smiled faintly, tears stinging his eyes. "Yeah, baby. We did." And in that simple truth, he realized it wasn't about destroying Harold. It was about saving Katherine and proving to his daughter that real heroes fight for what matters most. Months later, life looked different. Michael, Katherine, and Lily lived quietly in a small cottage on the outskirts of London. No marble floors, no Rolls-Royces, just warmth, laughter, and freedom. Katherine found work with a charity helping veterans transition back into civilian life, inspired by Michael's journey. Lily thrived in school, her bright spirit lighting up every room. One spring afternoon, as they sat together in the garden, Lily looked up at her father. "Daddy, do heroes always win?" Michael smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "No, sweetheart, heroes don't always win. But they never stop fighting for the people they love." Katherine leaned against him, her hand resting on his. For the first time, Michael felt whole again, not because he had saved Katherine, but because together they had built something stronger than wealth or power. And in the quiet of that garden, surrounded by laughter and love, Michael knew the truth. Real heroes don't wear capes. They raise daughters who see the world clearly and women who choose freedom over fear.